When people talk about their favorite Mel Brooks films, chances are they will say Blazing Saddles or Young Frankenstein are their favorites, and many will also say that they like Spaceballs or Robin Hood Men in Tights. One unusually underrated Mel Brooks film is 1977's High Anxiety, which is a parody of the many Alfred Hitchcock films. Mel Brooks stars as Dr. Richard H. Thorndike, a Nobel Prize-winning psychiatrist who becomes the director of a psychiatric hospital after his predecessor dies under mysterious circumstances. He discovers that the hospital staff, including the creepy Nurse Diesel, played by Cloris Leachman, and Dr. Montague, played by Harvey Korman, are engaged in a conspiracy at the hospital, which I won't give away here. High Anxiety is very funny. It's 100 times funnier than Robin Hood Men in Tights, and I enjoy it much more than Spaceballs. And while it may not have as many iconic comedy scenes as Young Frankenstein or Blazing Saddles, I think it has the best pacing of these four movies. The Mel Brooks films I have seen usually have some very funny scenes, but there is a lot of cringy stuff you have to get through to eventually reach those comedy gems. The cringe to gem ratio in High Anxiety is very favorable, so you will get a lot of laughs and very little cringe. Thankfully, you don't need to have seen every Alfred Hitchcock movie in order to like this one. I have only seen the major Hitchcock films like Psycho, The Birds, and Vertigo, and High Anxiety probably made a bunch of references that I didn't get, but that's not a problem. One thing I like about High Anxiety is that it doesn't treat its audience like they are complete idiots. Sometimes Mel Brooks feels the need to explain the most basic jokes to his audience, and it can be so frustrating. For example, in Spaceballs, when Lone Star jams the enemy's communications by shooting a jar of jam into their satellite dish, we get this drawn-out scene where he says, "Not if we jam it!" And he says, "All right, let's jam it!" And then he says, "You're about to be jammed!" And then a jar labeled jam in giant bold letters smashes into the satellite dish in slow motion. Then we need to see that there's jam coming from the computer monitor. Then we need to watch Dark Helmet taste the jam to see what flavor it is. Then make a joke about raspberries, and I'm thinking, yeah, we got it! He jammed the communications with jam, it's a play on words. Another example is in Young Frankenstein when Gene Wilder fails to bring the monster to life, and he says, "We need to accept our failures with dignity and grace." And then he turns around and says, "You son of a..." And then he starts choking the corpse, and it's a funny bit, but then to make sure that we got it, Igor needs to turn to the camera and say, "Dignity and grace," while rolling his eyes, and it's like, yeah, we got it. I can't really think of any moments like that in High Anxiety. The jokes are made, we laugh, and we move on. One of my favorite jokes in High Anxiety is how the camera keeps breaking the fourth wall. The camera accidentally crashes into things, or it gets in awkward camera angles and keeps getting blocked, and it's so funny to watch. They try to do it in Spaceballs by accidentally running the camera into Dark Helmet, but High Anxiety's camera jokes are far superior. There's one scene in particular, which I won't spoil, but I remember watching it for the first time, and suddenly the camera smacks into something. I just burst out laughing because it was just so perfectly timed, and the cast had a perfect reaction. It was just so brilliant. Another favorite scene of mine is when Mel Brooks is getting a hypnotherapy session from his mentor to overcome his fear of heights, and his mentor tells him that he has to fight it. Then Mel Brooks gets up and he's like, "Oh, I gotta fight it, and then he starts imaginary jumping rope and shadow boxing, and then he accidentally punches his mentor, and then the two of them get into a boxing match, and then one of the other staff members gets involved, and you really have to see it. It's rated PG, but that was before the PG-13 rating came out, so it's not for kids, due to some adult humor for those of you who care about that kind of stuff. Again, I love this movie, and if you watch it, you will not regret it.